Hi there, welcome to the Healing Migraines Naturally podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie Caesar, and I help women all over the country rediscover a migraine-free life. Why do I do this? Because I used to have chronic migraines myself, and it's the reason why I became a naturopathic doctor. So welcome to the podcast. Today I'm going to do a deeper dive into I made a more of a passing reference to this topic when I talked about the new food pyramid guidelines a couple weeks back. And I touched on this, and then I got some feedback from people that they would like to hear more about this. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And so we're talking about the hidden epidemic, sort of the epidemic in plain sight that's hiding amongst women who have chronic migraines. And that hidden epidemic is low appetite. So let's dive into this. So our appetite is our desire to eat food. What do I mean, right? So our appetite is not only the sensation of feeling hungry, right? Like, oh yeah, I'm getting hungry. I want to eat something here. It's sort of the desire, the enthusiasm that we feel around eating. But then our appetite is also the types of food that we want to eat, that taste good to us, that we kind of feel called to, that we feel pulled to eat. So our appetite is sort of a combination of those two things, our actual desire or enthusiasm to eat, and then the types of foods that we find appealing that we want to eat, okay? And so usually when people think about appetite or they hear the word appetite, they're usually thinking about that first part of it, right? You know, I have an appetite when I feel like eating, I want to eat, I feel this hunger signal. That's my appetite. But your appetite is also the foods that you are drawn to. A lot of times people will have food cravings, right? So, oh, I'm just craving bread. I'm craving potato chips. I'm craving like salty, crunchy, like pretzels, those types of things. I crave hard candy, right? I crave ice cream. There are many times people will have food cravings, outright food cravings, where they're like pulled and they're kind of like fighting themselves not to eat that food. Or also people just, I have a taste for this more. It's sometimes we call these like comfort foods, like I just have a taste for, macaroni and cheese. I just have a taste for, a grilled cheese sandwich. I just have a taste for mashed potatoes and gravy, right? So we sort of have this sensation, or, there's certain foods that we associate as, comforting, soothing, kind of rainy day foods, or things that are very appealing to us. If I could just eat this one thing, it would just be so appealing to me. It would just taste so good to me. French fries. I could eat French fries with every meal, right? So it's those types of foods that we're either outright craving or that we find very appealing to eat. And then there are other foods that we might feel almost repulsed by, right? Or it just doesn't have a pleasant texture. It doesn't have a pleasant taste, right? So a lot of people, they might say, well, like chicken breast. Oh, it's just so dry to me. I just hate eating that dry chicken breast meat. It's just really unappealing to me, and I just kind of have to like choke it down if I'm over at somebody's house and they grill that, or I'm at a wedding and that's what's being served. It just seems so dry to me. It's just unappealing. I'd really rather not eat it. So then we have foods that we're sort of repulsed by, and that's part of our appetite too. So the misconception that we have about our appetite is we think that it's just sort of like that desire to eat, the hunger signals. We think that that's our appetite. But our appetite is this more subtle desires and repulsions and cravings and things that we're drawn to, what seems appealing. Usually people think about those things as something that's innate to them. This is just sort of how I'm wired. I'm somebody that really likes French fries, right? Or they think that, it's all psychological, right? Well, I'm just craving these chips because it's just, I must have some sort of, I must have some sort of, mental eating issue, right? Emotional eating issue that I'm struggling with, that I'm battling. That's why I keep craving the pretzels or the chips or, the popcorn or these types of things. A lot of people will assume that it's something like more on the emotional side that's driving them towards those foods. And what I have found in my work is that usually in like 9 out of 10 situations, that is not the case. And I actually just taught on this at a naturopathic school in San Diego this week. And I taught on this concept to the students. And this was actually new information for them too. So this is something that is not widely understood or taught or really considered within sort of the natural medicine industry, right? So when you're going to a natural practitioner, like another naturopathic doctor like myself, or a chiropractor, or an acupuncturist, or a nutritionist, functional medicine doctor, health coach, this concept that I'm going to talk about today is not widely considered. I was not taught it when I was in naturopathic medical school. It's an understanding that I've gained, particularly since I've been working with women with chronic migraines exclusively since 2017, right? So this is an understanding that I've developed because I have worked so closely with women with migraines. And that's why I say it's sort of like this hidden epidemic in plain sight amongst women with chronic migraines. So what we think of as our appetite, right, is a little bit of a misconception. Now, where does our appetite come from? Our appetite comes from our digestive function. And this is what people don't understand, okay? And this is what I taught on this week. Our appetite is an expression or a function of our digestive function. So if our digestive tract is struggling to break food down, then our body is going to change our appetite to accommodate our digestive function. And this is what people don't realize, okay? So our digestive tract starts in the mouth, ends at the anus, okay? So when we're chewing the food, right, when we're swallowing the food, this is all part of the digestive function. So when I'm working with a new client, I'm doing a detailed assessment. Is every part of their digestive tract functioning properly? And if not, where is it not functioning properly? And then I'm looking for the impact on the digestive. And then I'm looking for the impact on the appetite. So, starting in the mouth, we have to have enough saliva production, right? So that when we're chewing the food, you've probably heard the phrase digestion starts in the mouth. That's because of the saliva starts to break the food down in the mouth, and we are chewing the food not only to break it up into small pieces so that we can swallow it, but so that we're kind of mashing that saliva into the food, getting it mixed up in the saliva so that the digestive process can start. Then we have to be able to swallow the food, put it into the esophagus. So you're going to have coordination with your tongue and the muscles in your mouth, etc., to swallow the food, get it into the esophagus. Then the esophagus is a tube lined with muscle, and it sort of squeezes the food down into the stomach. So you have to have proper nerve signaling. The muscles that line the esophagus and line the entire digestive tract, they have to have the nutrients that they need to contract and move the food down. Those muscles are going to generate waste material that has to be cleared out of the cell. In order for those muscle cells to function properly, there can't be a bunch of trash laying all over the place. Things are not going to go well if that's the case. And then there has to be enough cellular energy to also contract those muscles, right? So I'm describing this in the esophagus, but this process has to take place throughout the entire digestive tract. It's called peristalsis, okay? So you have to have this coordinated muscle contraction and moving of the food down the esophagus. So when that is impaired, what do people experience? Well, they feel, most obviously, they feel like the food is getting stuck in their esophagus. And this is a much more common symptom than people realize. So, they're feeling like it's getting stuck, they're coughing, they got to drink a bunch of water, and that fluid is sort of forcing it down, pushing it down. Many times when this happens to people, it'll be more prominent with drier foods. So it'll be more prominent with foods like rice. Oh, I got to be really careful with rice. Sometimes that gets stuck. It gets stuck in my throat, right? And it's like, I just can't get that rice down. Or it's going to be like drier foods like that white meat chicken breast, right? That is kind of a drier meat, right? And so it's like, well, I got to be real careful now when I eat, breast meat chicken, because that has a tendency to get stuck in my esophagus, right? So we have to look at, okay, are you actually able, after you chew and swallow the food, is your esophagus actually moving that food down into the stomach? Then when it's in the stomach, right, the stomach has to produce hydrochloric acid, and it has to churn and grind, really grind it, right? Our teeth and our mouth are doing that at the beginning, but then the stomach is really, really grinding that food up, mixing it with the hydrochloric acid, and starting to break that food down in the stomach. So there are some foods that are harder to digest, and there are some foods that are easier to digest. And so if your stomach and your small intestine are struggling to break that food down, and your small intestine is breaking food down with the help of digestive enzymes that are coming in from the pancreas. It's also emulsifying the fat in the meal with the help of bile that's being squirted into the small intestine from the gallbladder. Okay, so, we've got the hydrochloric acid in the stomach. We've got other digestive molecules or enzymes in the stomach. We've got pancreatic enzymes, bile, right? The small intestine is moving the food through different areas within the small intestine, have a tendency or an affinity to absorb different nutrients. So it's a very complex process to get this food broken down, emulsified, the nutrients liberated, absorbed in the right section of the digestive tract. You also have beneficial bacteria within your digestive tract that also aid in digestion and converting certain nutrients into, more usable nutrients. So this is a very complex process, and if there are things that are not functioning properly within this complex process, our body adapts to that. Our body always wants us to function as well as we can in the environment that it's in. Okay, so if our digestion isn't functioning optimally, if it's only running at 70%, we just don't drop dead. Our body adapts to that and says, okay, well, if I only got 70%, what changes are going to be necessary in order for me to get the most out of that 70% function? And our body changes our appetite so that we are drawn towards foods that are a better fit for our digestive function. And this is what people don't understand and what people are not talking about when they're talking about making, health supporting dietary changes, etc. So the food cravings that you're having are more than likely, 9 times out of 10, I'm telling you, the food cravings that you're having are probably not due to like a deep-seated mental and emotional issue. Now, perhaps, what I have found in my work is for a small percentage of people, yes, there is a mental and emotional component to food cravings and their relationship with food and so on. But for the vast majority of us, the food cravings that we're experiencing is our body pulling us, driving us, encouraging us to eat the food that our digestive tract can actually break down. So the foods that are the easiest foods to break down are very glucose dense plant foods, okay? We call these things carbs, okay? Now, all plants are made out of carbohydrates, okay? So this is another common misconception. People say, well, I'm cutting the carbs, right? What do they mean? They mean they're cutting out potatoes and they're cutting out, wheat bread and they're cutting out pasta, those types of foods that are made out of grains. That's what people mean when they say I'm cutting the carbs, carbs are bad, this type of thing. But all plants are made out of carbohydrates, okay? Carbohydrates are long chains of glucose, and they give plants their structure so that plants can stand up. And some plants, the plants that we eat, we can actually sort of snip the glucose off of those glucose chains. Most plants we can't eat, okay? So most plants, they're poisonous to us. They produce plant toxins that are poisonous and would, do us great harm. But also, they have a type of carbohydrate. The way the glucose is on those carbohydrate chains, we can't snip that glucose off those chains. So the plants that we eat, we can sort of liberate the glucose off of that carbohydrate chain, and we can bring that glucose into our bloodstream to use it as a fuel. All right, so your blueberries and your broccoli are just as much made out of carbohydrates as your potatoes and your pasta. It's just that potatoes and pasta have a lot more glucose on those chains. Blueberries and broccoli don't have a lot of glucose on those carbohydrate chains. So within the plants that we eat, there's a very big variance as to how much glucose is on those carbohydrate chains. And the plants that we call carbs, those are plants that have a lot of glucose on those chains. So this is one of the easiest tasks for our digestive tract, is to liberate the glucose off the chains, okay? So if I'm struggling to break down food, I'm going to be drawn to eat something that has a lot of glucose in it because I can get a lot of bang for the buck, right? At least, through as minimal effort, I can at least get some glucose in here, right? Because I want to run on glucose. Everything in your body prefers to run on glucose. If you're in a famine, it can run on ketone bodies. You can mimic a famine by doing a keto diet, what used to be called an Atkins diet. And then your body will switch its metabolism to run on what are called ketone bodies. Your liver can also make glucose, right? So then your liver will start making glucose to augment that. But our body prefers to run on glucose. And so if our digestive function starts to deteriorate, our body says, all right, how do I thrive in this environment where my digestion is, operating at 50%? Well, I know I need glucose. Okay. So I'm going to make her want to eat glucose. She's going to want the chips. She's going to want the candy, right? Like your body is trying to keep you alive. It's trying to do the best for you. I know it feels like your body hates you and that it's trying to torture you, but that's not actually the case. So your body is pulling you, right? You're not conscious of this. This is not a choice that you're making, but it just seems like, oh, those pretzels, that tastes so good, right? Oh, those French fries, oh, that tastes so good. The hard candy, why can't I stop eating this, right? Toast with butter, oh, that would just, noodles, with olive oil, that would taste so good right now, right? Our desire, our appetite, the foods that taste good to us are going to be compatible with our digestive function, okay? Foods that are very hard to break down are animal foods. The protein-dense animal foods are harder for your digestive tract to break down, okay? It requires more energy to break down protein than snipping glucose off of a bowl of pasta. Okay? Certain animal foods are easier to digest than others. So guess what, right? Nobody likes to eat that dry chicken breast when they have low appetite. That's because that's harder to break down than, say, the protein in eggs, right? When people have low digestive function, they want to eat more easily digestible protein sources, okay? This is where dairy protein, casein, is easier to break down. And so this is where people start, oh yeah, cottage cheese. This seems just, oh, I love cottage cheese. Cheese, I just want to put cheese on stuff, right? I want a grilled cheese. I want to put that shredded cheese on everything. I want a cheese sauce. That tastes really good. Eggs, this is where people, yeah, I love breakfast for dinner, right? Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? But a lot of people, it's like, well, I just feel like having scrambled eggs. That would be appealing. Beef, particularly ground beef, okay? When you grind up the meat, you're sort of pre-chewing the meat. You're sort of making it easier for your digestive tract to get the saliva into the meat, and then when it's in your stomach, right, you've kind of pre-chewed it in the grinding process, right? So a lot of people with low appetite, they can eat a hamburger, they can have ground beef and a taco, but you put a steak in front of them, oh no, this tastes dry, this is overcooked, I gotta chew this too long, right? It just becomes unappealing. Same thing, a lot of people, oh, chicken? No, I don't want that, I don't want that grilled chicken. That doesn't sound good. But ground turkey, yeah, I could do a ground turkey. I could do that, a turkey burger, something like that. This is why a lot of people now, they prefer the factory-made heat and serve protein options, right? So you go into Costco, there's I'm a Costco member. You go in there, they just have row after row of those refrigerator cases or the freezer cases, right? Where there's factory-made sort of heat and serve meat options for you, protein options for you. This is like the, Amy's Organic chicken sausage or, chicken burgers or the chicken meatballs, right? The factory has ground it up, kind of molded it into a shape and frozen it, and you can heat and serve it. This is why so many people would rather do like a, Amy's Organic chicken meatball than sit down and have a piece of steak, right? Because that chicken meatball, it's all ground up. There's probably some cheese in it. Usually they put like cheese in there too, right? So it's like so much easier for the typical American digestive tract to break that down than to sit down and have like a pot roast. My grandmother, she used to make pot roast all the time, right? These are tough cuts of meat. People don't eat like that anymore, right? We're eating the stuff that's kind of pre-ground and reformed for us in the factory. And, this is why these things are so appealing to us, because most Americans, their digestion is struggling, okay? And it's not functioning 100%. And so you can see that the food supply has changed to accommodate people's digestive function. So your food cravings, right? On the easiest digestible side of things, you've got things made out of grains. Hardest food to digest is going to be your protein dense, your animal foods. Kind of in the middle is the fat category. So fats are emulsified. They have to be emulsified by the bile that your gallbladder squirts into your small intestine when the food moves from your stomach to your small intestine. And that bile is going to emulsify the fat to allow the enzymes that are coming in from the pancreas to break those fat molecules down into the individual fatty acids that are part of those little fat molecules. That is something that is harder to do, than liberating glucose off of carbohydrate chains, but easier than breaking down protein into amino acids. So this is why a lot of people, they want the toast with the butter. They want the macaroni and cheese. They want the noodles with the butter, right? Because you're combining the glucose and the fat, and that's pretty easily digestible. Then you put in the protein and people say, I just want a couple bites, okay? Also, the more nutrient dense a food is, the harder it is to break it down, right? I mean, if there's more nutrient content in the food, your digestive tract is going to have to work harder on that piece of food. So grains, they're very glucose dense and they're not very colorful. They're pretty much beige, right? So, people are told to eat a rainbow in those new FDA guidelines that I talked about on the previous podcast, right? They're recommending that Americans double, maybe even triple their protein intake, and they recommend getting your protein from animal foods, and they recommend eating a very colorful diet, and most of the color variety in our food is going to come from colorful plants. Fruits and vegetables, right? Everybody knows you're supposed to eat your vegetables. This is why they're very, very colorful, wide variety of colors in the vegetable category. And the micronutrients in our food are colorful molecules, and they color our food. That's why people are told to eat a rainbow. When you went into my daughter's elementary school, their gymnasium/cafeteria, when you went in there, they had all these posters all over the wall that said, eat a rainbow. And they had a little poster of all of the red foods and all of the purple foods and all of the green foods. And right, so, children are told this in the schools, right? But when someone has low digestive function, they don't want to eat a kale salad. They may be forcing themselves to eat a kale salad. I've had a lot of clients over the years that have been forcing themselves to eat food that is very unappealing to them because it's quote unquote healthy and they know that they're supposed to eat a healthy diet. But, is that kale salad really that appealing to people when they have low digestive function? It really isn't. So a lot of people, especially women with migraines, they know, okay, I don't feel like eating a lot of food. I know that I'm not supposed to just eat, toast and butter or noodles and butter, but boy, does that sound good. I'm really craving sodas. I'm really craving candy, right? These are like easy glucose sources, but I know I'm not supposed to eat that. And I know, everybody says kale is good for you and, chicken breast with no fat in it. That's what I should be eating. And so they're sort of white knuckling their way through their meals. They're forcing themselves to eat these foods and they're feeling worse and worse. And this is why. Because if you're putting food into your digestive tract that your digestive tract can't break down, no one's going to feel great in that situation. So it's not advisable. But if you're prone to migraines, this is the crux of it here. If you're prone to migraines and you put a bunch of food into your digestive tract that you can't break down, and that food starts to rot, because that food is going to start to rot in your digestive tract. Just like if you leave food out on your counter, you forget to put it away in the fridge and you leave it out on your counter, that food starts to rot on your counter. The food in your digestive tract is in a 98-degree environment, okay? The food that you forget on your kitchen counter that you forget to put away, that's in a, 68-degree environment. The food in your digestive tract is in a 98-degree environment, and it is going to rot very quickly. This is why we've got to, when we eat food, our digestive tract has to spring into motion, break that food down so that the food isn't there anymore. We're liberating the nutrients, right? Obviously, we are going to have some waste material as a result, but we've got to break that broccoli down as fast as possible so that it doesn't start to rot like it would if you left it out on your, out in the sun in a 98 degree day. Okay. So, it's, sorry, just a second. The sun is shifting and now I can see this shadow here. Just a second. Okay. So, so if you are putting food in to your digestive tract and it's not breaking it down and the food is starting to rot, this is a fantastic way to get a migraine. Okay. And so for migraine sufferers, this issue is particularly relevant. Someone who is not prone to migraines, they might put a bunch of food in their digestive tract that it can't break down, and they're going to feel it. They might feel real foggy. They might feel real tired. Oh, why do I have to take a nap? I feel like taking a nap. I can't make, the afternoons at work. I feel like I'm going to fall asleep at my desk after I eat my lunch. So they might feel fatigued or brain fogged, or they might have a lot of digestive symptoms, right? They might be having, heartburn and indigestion, and they, may not, might have to run to the bathroom or something like that. They may not feel great, but if they're not prone to migraines, they're not going to go, from feeling reasonably well to, now I'm laying in a dark room with an ice hat on, and, please nobody bother me or I'm going to rip your head off, right? So, the stakes are a lot higher for those of us who are prone to migraines. So, so how do you, what do you want to look for to know whether or not you have low appetite? Well, can you eat 3 meals a day? A lot of people, they don't remember the last time they felt hungry for a breakfast. And so many people say, oh, well, I'm just not a breakfast person. I've been like this my whole life. I mean, I was like this as a kid. I wasn't eating breakfast when I was a kid, and I didn't have migraines then. So, I mean, this is just how I am, right? I hear stuff like this all the time. There's a reason why all over the world there's a cadence to our meals, and there's a concept of breaking the overnight fast. When we're sleeping, we are engaging in a fast. And then we break the fast with our breakfast. I love this word in English because it's a literal word, okay? And so around the world, people are breaking that overnight fast. That's not a coincidence, okay? So, again, everybody knows you're supposed to eat breakfast, right? But if you don't have an appetite for breakfast, your body doesn't want you to put that food in there, okay? So this is why I want to caveat everything that I'm saying here. The point of this podcast is to not tell you to go out and, force yourself to eat a breakfast, force yourself to eat protein, force yourself to eat colorful vegetables. That's not the point of this podcast. If you don't feel like eating breakfast, okay, we should start to get hungry within about an hour after we wake up because we just fasted for a long period of time. But, most of us are not eating the second before we fall asleep, right? So we probably haven't eaten anything in at least 10, if not 12 hours. So we should start to feel hungry when we wake up and we get moving and we start being active. We should develop an appetite. That's what should happen. If it's not happening, it's because your digestive tract is like, hey, look, she may be up, but I haven't woken up yet. I'm not ready for the day. Don't put anything in here. So we don't feel like eating. If you override that and you're prone to migraines, it's a great way to get a migraine. So we should feel like eating 3 times a day. We should have enough of an appetite where we can eat a full meal. And this is where people lose the sense of what is a full meal, because as this phenomenon progresses over the years and people's appetite declines, they start to lose the feel for, what is a full meal? For most women, 3 to 4 ounces of protein from animal foods is going to be a good recommendation. Serving of grains or beans, some vegetables, maybe a little fruit, maybe you want a little nuts and seeds sprinkled on something for flavor, right? We should be able to eat the variety of food groups in a reasonable quantity 3 times a day. Okay. And so many women with migraines, they're not eating very much protein with 1 or 2 meals per day because they don't feel like eating it. It seems unappealing to them. It seems disgusting. It seems dry. I'm too full. I took a couple bites. I was done. That filled me up. So I don't want to just fill up on 2 bites of chicken. So I'm not going to eat the chicken. I'm going to eat these other foods that I can eat more of. So this isn't about forcing your body to do something against its will. It's driving you to eat these foods because it's trying to do the best it can with the digestive function that it has. So we should be able to eat a full meal, a reasonable quantity of food. So often my clients will say, "Oh, to me, I feel full, right? I eat my meal and I feel full. So what do we think? Well, if I feel full, I must have eaten enough, right? That's what it seems like to us. But, my husband keeps telling me, "Oh, you eat like a bird. Shouldn't you eat more?" My daughter keeps saying, "Mama, you need to eat more. Shouldn't you?" Right? So we're getting feedback from people who care about us and want the best for us saying, "Geez, you don't eat that much. Do you think you'd feel better if you ate more?" And then we go, "Well, I can't eat anymore. I'm full," right? So that can be an indicator. If other people are kind of giving you some feedback that you don't eat very much, even though to you it seems like you are because you are, eating a little bit and getting full, right? That's a clue that your appetite is diminished. And then if you have, like we talked about, if you're just, gosh, I gotta have pretzels, right? Right? If we're craving these easily digestible foods, it's probably not a mental emotional issue. It's probably your digestive tract trying to, do the best it can, and it wants easily digestible foods. If you have digestive symptoms, and we've talked about this so much on the podcast, okay, you should not have digestive symptoms. And most Americans do not know this because we have been told that it's normal to eat a piece of pizza and then have heartburn and need to take a Tums, okay? It is not normal to eat food and then have heartburn, indigestion, gurgling, gas, bloating, all of these symptoms, okay? It's, a lot of women just think it's normal that, well, I woke up and my stomach was flat, but, by the time I go to bed, it looks like I'm pregnant. That's a symptom of bloating. That's not normal digestive function, okay? So if you are having digestive symptoms, that is indicating that your digestive tract is not functioning 100%. If you can't produce enough saliva, if it's like, oh, I got to drink a lot of water when I'm chewing because this just is all dry in here and I can't swallow the food without water. If things are getting stuck in your esophagus or it's like, oh, this is not going down, right? Anything, right? Your stomach is queasy, heartburn, gurgling, you're having loose stools, you are having constipation, right? Everything, you should eat your food. You should, oh yeah, this looks good. This looks like good food. I'm hungry now. I'm going to eat my meal. You should be able to chew your food, swallow your food, and then once your food gets in there, you shouldn't notice it, okay? There shouldn't be anything going on there. You should just eat your food, enjoy your food, have a bowel movement. That's it. You shouldn't really be aware of anything else going on in there. And for a lot of Americans, this is like, what are you talking about, right? So if you have digestive symptoms, your appetite is going to be affected to some extent because your digestion is not functioning optimally. So how do we get out of this situation? Okay. The number one thing is that we have to give our digestive tract the food that it can actually accommodate, and then we have to restore the digestive function. So when I taught at the Naturopathic College this week, and I talked about how I approach this with my clients, a lot of, there were a lot of light bulbs going off because no one had ever taught them like this before. So with my clients, I'm doing this detailed assessment when we start working together as to where is their digestive function and where is their appetite. And then, contrary to what every other natural practitioner does, what my clients have been told to do before, and how these naturopathic students are being taught in their naturopathic medical school, I don't just whip out the healthy eating handouts, okay? If I take a woman who's in the throes of chronic migraines and just say, okay, I want you to eat like this, right? I want you to eat like the new food pyramid. I want you to eat according to my handouts because this is what healthy eating looks like. And your digestive tract can't handle it, you're highly likely to get a migraine. So I recommend that my clients eat the food that they can actually digest, and then we come in, usually with some herbs, to very, very gently stimulate their digestive tract. Okay? This is not giving things like pancreatic enzymes or hydrochloric acid or bile salts. In some cases, I might do something like that because the function of the organ is so impaired that we really need to augment the organ that's struggling. But the ultimate goal is to actually get your digestive organs functioning properly on their own. And so there are some herbs that are called bitter herbs that will stimulate the digestive function. There are a lot of different types of bitter herbs. Some of them are very, very gentle, very kind of weak acting. Some of them are very, very strong. So this again is where I customize this for my clients, right? So if I have somebody with, maybe 75%, digestive function, I can do a stronger stimulation on that digestive tract. Then if I have somebody where it's like their digestive tract is like really struggling, 25% function, I'm going to go with something that's very, very gentle, very, very low dose, and a little bit of a nudge rather than a push. And so a lot of people say, well, Dr. Leslie, why don't you just say, what should I take? What should I take? And this is why I don't give specifics on this podcast. I'm not selling supplements. I don't have an herbal medicine company and that I'm, selling those products, okay? When you listen to people that are doing podcasts with the purpose of selling their products, yeah, then, their product is like a miracle cure for everything. That's not what I do. I work with my clients after doing a detailed individual assessment, and then I'm using my knowledge and experience to say, okay, what is going to be the best thing for this person? Because again, if you're prone to migraines, right, we know how sensitive we are, right? So if you push the digestive tract of a chronic migraine sufferer too hard, they're probably going to get a migraine. Ask me how I know, okay? My own personal painful experience with practitioners that didn't understand this. So what I'm doing is very carefully trying to identify, okay, where's the function? And we want to get enough of a push, enough of a stimulation so that the organs do start to repair and recover and start functioning properly on their own. But we got to get that right balance. We got to get just the right level of push. Not too weak that we're not making progress, but not too strong that we're tipping into a migraine. And so I'm not going to give you specifics on the podcast because I don't want you to hurt yourself, okay? This is not a joke. A lot of people think, oh, well, it's natural medicine, it's natural, nothing bad can happen. Far from the truth, okay? These are very powerful herbs, and if they're not used in the right way, in the right context, especially if you're prone to migraines, you could very easily get a very, very bad migraine. You might have experienced this with other practitioners, right? So I don't operate that way. I have been in that hypersensitive state myself. I know how paralyzing it is, right? We know we need to do something differently to feel better, but we're so afraid because any little thing that we do differently can tip us into a migraine. I have been there personally. I get it. I work very hard trying to thread this needle of giving enough of a push, enough of a change towards health without tipping my clients into a migraine. Okay, so I hope this was helpful to you. We did a deeper dive into this, and let me know if you saw yourself in some of these descriptions. Okay, like I say, this is very, very common amongst women with migraines, where they have a low appetite. They are not able to eat enough food in the day to many times meet their basic just energy requirements, let alone nutrient requirements. And that is not because of sort of how they were wired or their genetics or their willpower or mental, emotional food issues. It's due to their digestive function not being adequate to digest or break down more quantity of food or more nutrient-dense foods. I will add one more thing here, because when I do talk about this, a very common reaction that women have is, well, so you're going to tell me to eat more food, like the goal is for me to eat more food? Well, I want to lose weight. How's that going to work, right? So here's the thing. People don't gain weight when they're eating a health-supporting diet, okay? So when we have this dialed in properly, women are not gaining weight, okay? Most women, most of my clients, they do want to lose weight. We have been told that our weight is like a simple math equation. Calories eaten minus calories burned equals our weight. And our weight is not a simple math equation. It's a complex calculus equation, okay? So certainly if we tremendously overconsume calories, if we tremendously overeat, we're going to put on weight. But most of my clients are not eating enough food. They're not eating enough calories to just support their basal metabolic rate, which your basal metabolic rate for most women is going to be around 1,400 calories a day. That's typical of, if you look at the typical height of a female, you're going to be around 1,400 calories or so. Many of my clients are not able to even eat 1,400 calories a day, and yet they're overweight, okay? So your weight is not just, calories eaten minus calories burned equals your weight. If that were the case, nobody would have a problem with their weight, okay? And people with low digestive function, they would all be underweight, and that's not the case. Most people with low digestive function and they're under-eating are actually overweight, okay? So if that little devil on your shoulder when you're listening to this starts to say, well, what about Dr. Leslie's going to make me even fatter than I already am? That's not the case, okay? So I'm just going to put that caveat out there as well, okay? When our body is functioning optimally, when we have enough nutrients to function properly, when we don't have an overload of waste material and toxins, when we have enough vitality and cellular energy, we're eating a health-supporting diet, people are not gaining weight because of that, okay? They're gaining weight because they are deficient or lacking, or there's blockers within those three things, okay? So thanks for joining me today. I hope that this was insightful for you. If you want to join us, I have a free Facebook group called Healing Migraines Naturally with Leslie Caesar, ND. Join us there because I get a lot of podcast topics from the comments and questions that are in the Facebook group. So would love to have you join us over there. And of course, if you are a woman in the United States that's struggling with migraines, and you resonate with my approach and you'd like to find out if I can help you or not, please book a free consult call with me. If I don't think that you're going to be a good fit for my approach, and if I don't think that I'm going to be able to help you, I will tell you that. But if I do think that I can help you, I will also break it down for you as to what is it like and what's involved to work with me one-on-one. So if that resonates with you, go ahead and book that call. I would love to talk with you. So see you next time, guys. I will talk to you soon.